is out. I watched it like a while ago and oh boy, it sucks. Like, I have never been disappointed in a movie in so long. Mostly because I have gotten used to being disappointed with modern movies. I'm used to going like, oh, that's gonna suck. And then if I watch, I'm like, yep, just as bad as I thought it was going to be. I know that's a sad mindset to have, but when you have fallen for, oh, this could get better, or this could be a better movie, so many times back to back, much just accept it as the norm and don't really get as disappointed or mad when you're just so used to it and barely had any standards. That was me for the longest time. And originally, I was not for this remake because as a known fact about me that I've said in the past, which I'm going to introduce to new viewers, live action Disney remakes suck. And they are extremely lazy most of the time. I hate most of the live action Disney remakes. That's why I stopped watching them at a certain point, because my criticisms with the live action Disney remakes, it's bad, it's just a repeat, thick and thin of the original story, but with different actors this time. What is the point of watching the movie if I'm going to get the exact same thing again with different actors this time? What is the point? It just didn't seem worth it. And with how live action remakes have been going lately, like Mufasa and Snow White 2025 being the last films that they did for live action, be horrendous for box office ratings. Supposedly, Mufasa did amazing, but that is a lie spread by Disney. Sonic 3 absolutely destroyed Mufasa in the box office and was the top performing film in that era. Disney can't deny the failure known as Snow White 2025. They completely botched it with that movie, mostly because Rachel Zegler couldn't shut her mouth about political issues and bashing on the original source material. Made people like me mad and boycotted the movie. Of course, I reviewed it, not legally of course. Me and a friend watched it on a site and we both absolutely hated that movie with a burning passion. And I was still on the mindset that this movie would suck, it would just be a repeat of the original but with different actors, and it would just be a bad movie. But then a trailer for it came out. I think it was like the first or the second one. I can't really remember which one it was. And for some reason, it kind of caught my intrigue. Like, I, for some reason, wanted to check the movie out because the trailers didn't look bad. It looked like it was doing what I wanted. Maintaining the original story, but changing some things up so it's different from the original. Because if you're going to make the exact same movie beat by beat, but with different actors, then what is the point, as I said earlier? And I was hyped for this movie. I thought this movie could change it up and be as good as the original, or okay at least. Every detail was starting to be revealed. We saw Pleakley, didn't look good. We also saw Jumba, fine. We found out Gantu was not going to be in this movie. A bit disappointing, but let's see what they can do. Let's see who becomes the villain of this movie. Even though Gantu was a big part of original film, but let's see if they can actually think of a villain to replace him where it is tolerable. And then the movie came out, and I watched it, and it sucks because the movie started off pretty decent, and then the rest of the movie just happened. Mostly the end, but we will get there. I want to start with a huge breakdown, or a decently sized breakdown, of why the Lilo and Stitch remake sucks. And it ruined all the morals and values of the original film. So, spoiler warning for people that want to see the movie. So, here we go into spoilers. The movie pretty much opens the same way as the original. Jumba is in trial for creating a monster called 626, which is indestructible and as smart as 50 supercomputers or whatever he said in the remake, which did play one joke I actually liked with Jumba and Stitch playing chess and beating Jumba, and Jumba's like, I don't want to play anymore, as he brushes all the pieces off. That actually cracked me up. And of course, after that moment, then we continue on where the Grand Councilwoman asks if there's good in Stitch, where they did add the new detail of there being a microphone in the cage, which was actually pretty smart, because going up, it is a bit strange that he just shouted that and they heard him. A little bit strange. Granted, it's a bit believable. I just like the little detail. Just like the original, Stitch manages to discuss the council, and Jumba, of course, is like, I didn't teach him that. Said that Jumba's lab would be taken away and he would go to prison, and 626 would be sent to exile, where 626 is immediately taken from the trial to the prison, where the guard from the original is now explaining the details of how the laser cannons are basically focused on his DNA and it will fire if he tries escaping, where Stitch very quickly realizes that any part of his DNA, wherever it goes, the cannons will follow. And just like the original, he spits on the person watching Stitch, except this time he makes a stupid joke about prohibit being gross, and then getting spat on by Stitch, and then the cannons aiming for him and firing, where then we get the breakout scene for Stitch. But unfortunately, in this version, it is extremely rushed, and I don't know why it was rushed this quickly. People speculated it might be because of the absence of Gantu, which I guess fair, but granted, I think you could have kept some shots. It just feels too quick. Then we go to the main deck of the ship, where the Grand Councilwoman is like, where is he? As they're trying to find him and pinpoint him, he has already taken the red ship, and they make the same joke. He's like, he took the red one, and escapes. Then, of course, the Grand Councilwoman looks where Stitch is heading and notices that he's heading for Earth, where she says that the density of his skin will weaken Stitch, and everyone's confused in this version, and she has to explain he'll basically drown underwater, and everyone's like, oh. But then, of course, we get to see Jumba about to be taken to his jail cell, where he says, if only there's somebody who could help you find Stitch and deal with him. Where the Grand Councilwoman in this version's like, you're the reason that we're in this mess. And Jumba's like, and I can get you out of it as long as you give me back my lab and let me go free. But she denies that, and she said we can simply just blow up the planet. Where one of the aliens at the control bay is like, already on it, which kind of also made me chuckle. But then this version of Pleakley came in and was shouting to stop, which of course the Grand Councilwoman says to ceasefire, and the one person's like, oh man. And Pleakley, just like the original, explains that planet is very essential for mosquito species, which used as humans as a food source. And Jumba makes the comment that him dressing up as a cowboy is really making him look like an expert, which did kind of crack me up. And Pleakley says he's studying a species that's part cow, part boy. Get it? Because of cowboy? But continuing on, the Grand Councilwoman decides to send both Jumba and Pleakley to go hunt down 626, but of course in a much faster way than the subtle build-up in the original, where, of course, Jumba would have been already locked up at this point and not about to be taken to prison. It's a weird change, but sure, let's go with it for now. And then Jumba, near the end of the scene, says, which helpless, defenseless planet is in your grasp of destruction. And then a transition to the Earth, where Lilo, in live action, is putting a sandwich in the ocean for Poncho. You remember the weather-controlling fish from the first movie that we don't even really get to see in this version. And also, when she puts the sandwich in the water, I'm like, no, that sandwich would disintegrate because of how wet it is. It would not stay intact at any way. But after she gives Poncho the fish the sandwich, she goes and does other things, like she hangs out in a hot tub with some random guy. He also makes a friendship bracelet out of a fishing pole and also frees a bunch of chickens, saying they deserve to be free. This seems like the character Lilo. It seemed like something that she would do but of course, just like the original, she's late to class and she is basically make sure that she makes it. But unfortunately this time, unlike the original, Lilo didn't technically sneak in. She made it before the show even started. And she mentions the stuff with Poncho and how he controls the weather and yada yada yada. And then in this version, Lilo says, look, I got a friendship bracelet. The other girls mock her for it because it's not a friendship bracelet if she doesn't have any friends. Which, of course, then they head out after this and the teacher does nothing whatsoever about it. And they start dancing where this supposed version of Myrtle pushes her as they're dancing and she falls over. And then Lilo, instead of just straight up attacking her, pushes her off the stage in this version. And then after that, Lilo is completely kicked out of the hula circle, where, of course, she was waiting for Nani, which another detail I forgot to mention is there's a designated spot for Nani in the theater, but of course she didn't make it because her truck had stopped working. And this is a major plot point for what happens later in this remake. So Lilo leaves like the original, and then also Nani comes to grab her, but it's already too late. She starts heading back to the house, where we get beat by beat of the original scene for the most part. Except for a few little things, like, of course, the door isn't hammered in this version, unlike the original, but it plays pretty similarly until we get to the agent, which we get the appearance of Oh no, it's not Bubbles in this version. This new character that they created for the Lilo and Stitch remake for the social worker in this version, the character is named Miss Cocoa, who is actually played by Tia Carrere, who actually was the original Nani in the animated version. It was nice to see her interact with this new Nani, and of course, beat by beat, she's making sure that everything's fine with Lilo, where they sneak at the back door. And of course, Nani goes in and takes care of everything before she lets the social worker in. And just like the original, she lets the social worker in, of course, this time not being Bubbles. And then, of course, she is getting something ready for social worker, but she doesn't have anything except, of course, Kool-Aid. I'm not even kidding. This is an actual thing. Whatever these juice things are. Basically squeezes that into a bowl. But then, of course, at the same time, the pot was boiling and the social worker was trying to help make sure the smoke alarm doesn't go off. Then Lilo comes in saying, don't worry, the smoke alarm doesn't have batteries in it, which does not give a good sign. It makes Nani struggle even harder than she did in the original, which, I mean, I guess that's cool. I guess. But anyway, of course, just like the original, Nani is giving signals to Lilo on what to say to the social worker. Of course, it being a bit different. And then instead of the abusive jokes, she decides to say she gets like 4 meals or something meals out of a day, like she's overfed, which was weird. I don't know why Disney decided to cut that out. I guess Disney didn't want to keep the abuse joke because they feared they would get canceled. Anyway, the social worker ends to drive off. Then, as she watches the social worker drive off, she turns around and starts chasing Lilo. Now, I called this out immediately because you could clearly see that she is still driving by the time she leaves. If she suddenly just looked at her front mirror, would easily see Nani chasing Lilo, and bam, Lilo's gone. End of movie. But apparently, that doesn't matter for some reason. Anyway, we get the whole chase scene, but of course, the dryer is completely cut this time. Unlike the original, which was edited back in, I believe it was 2020, there is no dryer at all. It wasn't changed into a pizza box. Just as a reminder, hashtag justice for the dryer. And Nani wraps Lilo in a blanket and to keep her from escaping. And she's like, why didn't you stay there? And she's like, you weren't there. Nani says, do you want to be taken away? Because that's what's going to happen. And Lilo licks Nani's arm, then leaves, and we get the whole funny bit of, go to your room, I am in my room. It's like the original. It was still pretty funny. And then the moment is ruined with a screaming goat. Disney, seriously. Have you not learned your lesson from Screaming Goats? Do you not remember what happened with Thor Love and Thunder? How people got annoyed with those goat jokes? Personally, I didn't watch the movie. It looked stupid from the trailers. But continuing on after the stupid goat joke, Nani decides to take out the trash, and we get to see this new neighbor character. And she decides to go talk to Nani and try to discuss things. Which one of those things is included about Nani going to college? Now, this is way different from the source material, but I honestly was okay with it at first. Because in this version, we kind of explore all the things that Nani didn't get to do because she had to take the responsibilities of watching over Lilo. Now, I remember a few people saying on the internet that this new neighbor character didn't need to exist, and it ruined the story of Lilo and Stitch, with Nani's character of basically taking care of her sister all by herself. I don't think it entirely ruins it, because yes, that was a big thing in the original, but at the same time, I don't mind there being an extra character to help out Nani in certain situations. Taking care of a child all by yourself can be very difficult. I'm okay with this change to kind of give Nani the help when she needs it, if it was done properly. But of course, Nani throws college application in the garbage again. And the neighbor's like, that college is the best college for that sort of... And Nani's like, I appreciate it, but I need to take care of Lilo. And the neighbor's like, have you asked Lilo what she wants? And Nani, common sense way, said, Lilo is 6. No. Which... yeah, Lilo is a child. Children would not make the best choices if their parents didn't intervene. Why is this so hard to understand nowadays? Screw this! Oh, I respect their safe place or whatever. Get that nonsense out of here.
This is my space. And when the hell did you pay rent in this house, little maricon? Out. Come here, come here, come here. You see the grass? That's your space, you little bastard. Go cut it.
Then David comes in, and he is socially awkward. Man, poor David. What did they do to you? David in the original was this guy who tried to keep wanting to date Nani, but Nani kept turning him down in the original, so she can watch over Lilo. In this version, it's like, nah, how do we make David a absolute loser? Let's make him into a beta male. You're a genius. And I'm not kidding. Like, not only when David first shows up, not only is he socially awkward and can't speak to Nani, but after Nani leaves and David keeps speaking, even his own grandmother, which is the neighbor, tells him to shut up. But what do you expect from modern Hollywood? Make women authorities, make men absolute trash. And no wonder why people lost so much respect for Disney over the years. But how would I know, right? Anyway, so then we get to the emotional moment where Lilo and Nani kind of bond a bit. And it's pretty much just like the original film, beat by beat, until the asteroid, which is perceived as a shooting star when Lilo is trying to kick Nani out. It is a bit different, unfortunately. Unfortunately, there was the no gravity's pushing down on me joke. Unfortunately, that part was hilarious. Now, I do understand why that joke might have been cut. Doing that actual scene to a child would have very dire consequences. That child would absolutely be injured in the process. I will miss you, joke, but I understand in this remake why it had to be cut out. And again, by beat, that she had a friend to rely on. And we get the transition with Stitch emerging. Same time as Stitch is roaming the Earth, Jumba and Pleakley are just tracking Stitch around. And at the same time, Stitch is at this wedding which he eats cake and then goes in a punch bowl and then farts in it. And then eventually he gets chased out of the wedding. Just like the original Lilo and Stitch, Stitch gets hit by a vehicle. Of course, instead of being 3 big delivery trucks, it is a party bus that instantly knocks him out. And we transition to Jumba and Pleakley at a hotel in Hawaii, and they're preparing to disguise themselves so they can blend in with the humans. On their way to the hotel, they run into 2 guys, which are conveniently played by actors who play them. And with this process, both Jumba and Pleakley have to scan and touch the people that they're disguising themselves as. They walk by, they transform into human. In the hotel, they book a room. Once they get the room, Pleakley starts setting up his area. Then Jumba grabs a portal gun because no, we can't have laser guns. Jumba shoots the wall, where then Pleakley immediately stops him before he leaves the portal, saying that we need to make sure that the humans don't see us. And Jumba points out, you mean like that guy? Which the human is the live action version of the Ice Cream Man, but this time he's actually Hawaiian instead of white, and also he has a snow cone instead of an ice cream. Yeah, I don't get it either. Anyway, then Jumba decides to deactivate Pleakley's human disguise and revealing his alien form. And the portal closes, and yeah, that was the scene. Then we transition to them on the elevator, where they see a news report about a strange creature that was at a wedding and crashed it, where then they know that this is 626 and they know where to go. Meanwhile, we transition back with Stitch. Just like the original, Stitch wakes up at the dog shelter. But the difference, unlike the original, is Stitch wakes up, the dogs start barking at him, and then he also bursts out of his individual cage. He's no longer in the other cages with the other dogs. He's a cage that you would have like at a house and you put your dog in it. These type of cages, if you remember to put the photo in. At the same time, Lilo comes in and wants to see the dogs. After she asked her neighbor if she can go look at the dogs. And, of course, the employee of the dog shelter has no candy, and basically Lilo has to give it all up. And she makes the comment that it makes them happy, and then we get a diarrhea joke from the employee. Meanwhile, Stitch is trying to escape, or then he finds a piece of cake outside, but then sees Jumba in his human form with Pleakley trying to catch him just like the original. And Stitch quickly just puts together, Stitch hops in a car, but of course he finds an object he thinks is a gun, but of course it's not a gun, and honestly this part did actually kind of crack me up. Stitch then sneaks under the truck and then goes back into dog shelter where he was before. Of course, just like the original, he tried to avoid humans, make sure that he didn't get caught, and Of course, then Lilo is sent to back with all the dogs, and she says that she tried bringing him candy. Of course, the employee that she couldn't bring the candy with, and Lilo notices that they're terrified, and Stitch puts 1 and 2 together as he overhears Jumba and Pleakley talking about we're gonna get Stitch, and Pleakley mentions the Grand Councilwoman mentioned not to kill any humans, which then Stitch sees a poster with a dog and a human and proceeds to change himself into a dog pretty similar to the original, but for some reason the dogs decide to help Stitch. Lilo finds Stitch and she chooses this one. And the strange thing about this scene is that Nani is nowhere in this scene. Original, Nani felt bad for Lilo, so he decided to let her get a dog. This scene feels strange, on the other hand, because she's nowhere to be seen in this new adaptation of the scene, and it kind of takes away one of the best aspects to Nani in this version. So the neighbor lady, just like Nani, is like, are you sure you want this dog? And Lilo's like, yeah, I want this. And then we transition to Nani go like, a dog? Are you insane? Neighbor mentions that it was her idea, and Nani and her kind of get into an argument. But then Nani has to go to work. Lilo to keep her and Stitch in line. And Lilo asks, are we keeping him? And he says, only for tonight. But first thing in the morning, we're returning him. He then says that he is her responsibility, and does she understand? Which Lilo says, of course. Then we transition to Agent Bubbles, who is investigating a crash site, which of course being Stitch's red ship that he used to escape. And Cobra Bubbles is strange in this version. Just a CIA agent, and he doesn't pretend to be a social worker in this version introduction, which is just weird. And also, the person they got for Cobra Bubbles in the live-action remake looks absolutely nothing like the character. He's way too short, and he's not buff enough. And also, he wears regular glasses instead of sunglasses. It is strange. It is weird. So, anyway, continuing on, the CIA agents are helping him look around, and one of the CIA agents reports a strange creature that was found somewhere, and Cobra Bubbles is then immediately on the case to deal with it. Meanwhile, Lilo and Stitch appear at a bench where they're eating ice cream, and Stitch is enjoying a monster movie that's on. But then this version of Myrtle and her friends comes in and starts being mean to Lilo after she calls them friends. So, kind of like the original, but this time, instead of them being on bikes, Myrtle and her team are walking, except this one girl who has one of those electric USB toy cars, and Stitch decides to steal that instead of a bike. And Lilo and Stitch are on their way to Far and Beyond because Stitch, as the original, is looking for mass destruction to cause at a big city. Jumba mentions that 626 programming is to destroy everything, including big cities, but he would not realize that he's trapped on this small island with no big cities, which we get a joke about there being no big cities just like the original. Who cares if there's a giant city? There's a hotel in this area of Hawaii. Go destroy that. You don't need no big city. Of course, then David and Lilo are talking with the whole thing with, oh, I got a dog, just like the original. And David's like, are you sure that's a dog? And she's like, yeah, but this time it's in the day. And doesn't take place at the show time at night like the original, but whatever, don't care. After Lilo talks to David the beta male, Lilo notices that Stitch is gone, and we get the anticipated soda shooter, which actually did hook me into checking out this movie because it was new and different and it seemed kind of funny, and it sorta is. Then looking back on the scene after that where Lilo and Stitch are just taking stuff, people including food, and using it to decorate a roasted pig, make it funny, and then the other pranks that they do, it just seemed a little bit too much out of character, especially since Nani told them to behave and that Lilo's responsibility was keeping Stitch in line. I feel like that was something that kind of the original Lilo got right, even though not being a perfect character, because a character should never be perfect to be a good character. That is just my opinion. And then we get to the nighttime show where the fire performers performing, which includes getting Stitch involved by grabbing fire torches and with a security guard trying to stop Stitch, which causes the fire, which then, after the fire and destruction, Nani puts on Lilo, even though that's not entirely her fault. That was Stitch and the security guard's fault. The security guard should have done a better job making sure that Stitch didn't start a fire, but hey, let's not fire that guy. We transition to later, Jumba and Pleagley being at the same area they were. Unfortunately, this version doesn't have the comical scene of Eat Pleagley and getting the she's just ugly joke. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. So, continuing on, we transition to them going back to the house, and of course, Nani lost her job. We have the whole argument after Stitch causes destruction where Nani's like, we're taking it back, and Lilo's like, Ohana meets family, and then Nani, for some reason's like, but our family abandoned us. No, they died. Dying does not mean abandoned. They have no control over living or dying. But of course, Nani comes to peace with Stitch being around, which then the scene pretty much plays out the same with the destruction of his room and Stitch trying to destroy everything. Of course, we don't get the destruction of the village, which would have been nice. Then we transition to the next morning where we get the live action version of the joke of Stitch having the ability to act like a record player. But of course, in this version, Nani doesn't pay attention because she is doing paperwork or paying bills, I don't know. But then suddenly she looks at her phone and realizes that she needs to go into work. And then, of course, new agent girl and Bubbles come to Nani's place. And of course, new agent lady explains that she heard that she no longer has a job. And at the same time, Bubbles is getting DNA from Stitch after talking to Lilo. And the two of them leave. And basically the message is Nani needs a new job to keep her in her custody, just like the original. And just like the original, we get a whole montage, which one of the bosses ends up being a original actor from the original Lilo and Stitch, the person who originally did David. I'm glad they're putting in the original actors from the original movie. Nice little detail. But of course, just like the original, the plan doesn't go well after tons of destruction that both Lilo and Stitch cost, only because Lilo is trying to teach Stitch how to be a model citizen. And of course, it does not go well, which costs Nani not getting any jobs. And it's a whole intro because of all the stuff that they're doing. And then after that, Stitch finds something, gives it to Lilo, which it's like teaching people how to surf, and Nani takes it. And she's doing a decent job with it. And of course, just like the original, Stitch eventually wants to try surfing. Of course, he's more excited about it this time than the original, where he's just like, you know what, I give up. Let's try it. And Nani and Lilo and Stitch are surfing, and they're having a good time until Jumba and Pleakley are on a jet ski, and they're clearly trying to knock him off. And the weird thing is, we don't get a joke. I'm like, oh, it's those weird guys again. Guy who was getting dragged on the ground, which was a part I forgot to mention. Yeah, no joke like that. And of course, like the original, they fall off. And as Stitch is trying to get back, of course, Nani kicks Stitch off. And of course, Agent Bubbles is making some phone calls. And then we transition to a hospital after these whole events, which of course Then the agent lady tells her to ask for Lilo, kind of like how Bubbles did in the original. Then the next scene, Nani is preparing Lilo for that she is no longer going to be with Lilo, and it's a whole thing. Goes back to Dog Pound. We then transition back to Jumba and Pleakley, which of course, just like the original, Jumba and Pleakley are fired, which Jumba is absolutely upset about. Pleakley is completely calm in this, even though it was the complete opposite in the original. And of course, the Grand Councilwoman says to bring Jumba in immediately, which Jumba easily deals with Pleakley and says, we're going to do things my way. Which then we transition to Lilo looking for Stitch, where she leaves, and then at the same time she leaves, then Agent Lady and Bubbles return. But of course, Lilo's missing, so they have to go out and find her. Lilo finds Stitch at the animal shelter, but then Jumba comes in and is trying to take 626. Basically get the whole reveal that Stitch was an alien completely rushed. So weird how they rushed it. And also, the assassination of a character that lots of people loved in the original Lilo and Stitch series. The character of Jumba. The character of Jumba is absolutely ruined in this movie. Since Gantu isn't in this version, Jumba decides to be the main villain of the movie. We transition to the gang looking for Lilo, including the neighbor. Then we transition back to Lilo and Stitch at the house. And of course, Jumba is there to get 626. But of course, he's destroying everything intentionally. Also say family is weak. And even shoots the door to the room that used to belong. I'll explain even further why Jumba was assassinated in this movie. In the original Lilo and Stitch, when Jumba was after Stitch, he wasn't intentionally just destroying things. He was only trying to get 626, and that was it. He did not mean to do any permanent damage to anything. Unlike this version, it's like, I'm gonna hunt 626, and also I'm gonna destroy this random stuff that means family. It's just so out of character for him, because if you subtract Stitch out of the equation in the original, Jumba wouldn't have destroyed Lilo's house, be in prison. And to bring further points to this argument is after Stitch and Lilo are taken by Gantu, at the end of the day, Jumba and Pleakley helped Stitch get back Lilo. Jumba was like, oh, I don't care about the human because I'm evil. That never happened in the original. At all. So, this strange change is a beloved character in the Lilo and Stitch franchise. And I'm just like, in my head, okay, how is he going to redeem himself in this version of the movie? Especially since the movie is wrapping up very soon. So then, of course, after revealing some details like Stitch using Lilo as like a human shield, Stitch decides to go with Jumba. And eventually, at the same time, Pleakley comes in after Jumba and Stitch leave. And then also, after Lilo follows them, the other family members come in and they see Pleakley and they basically talk it out and explain everything, what happened and what their mission was. And then Jumba in this version mentions that once he returns back, the Grand Councilwoman Galactic Force won't be able to stop him with the help of 627. Now, we do get a nice Easter egg of the TV show characters, specifically 624, 625, and 627. Which, if you don't know who 627 is, granted, he's only appeared in one official episode of the Lilo and Stitch show, and apparently he showed up in the anime that I have not seen. Basically, the character of 627 is the creation of Jumba wanting to teach Stitch a lesson because he was getting overconfident and thinking that he was the greatest of all time. And of course, this rogue experiment helped Gantu with catching other experiments, which was a huge gimmick of the show if I'm introducing this to anybody who has not watched the show for some reason. But In this version, unlike the show, it appears that Jumba, from what it sounded like, and people can tell me if I misheard it, but it sounds like he more wanted to turn 626 into 627, which is weird. So the other experiments, they weren't their own experiments. They were just eventually transitioned to 626. Let's move on. So eventually we find out Lilo snuck into the ship and she's helping Stitch escape somehow. And then we get all the humans arriving at the main area, and then Lilo and Stitch manage to stop Jumba and basically throw him off the ship when he accidentally clogs the area that Stitch was being held. Lilo presses Jumba's disguise, which made him skinnier, which caused him to fall out of the jet, which made the jet crash. Of course, in this version, Stitch and Lilo hit the water. Lilo tries saving Stitch, but he ends up sinking, and it's like this huge emotional moment for some reason. Nani and David manage to save Lilo, but Lilo's like, save Stitch, as David drags her back, and it's just, again, this emotional moment. But Nani decides to try to save Stitch in this version, but of course, just like Lilo, she has no progress until she realized, oh, I can just walk him underwater. And it's like this struggle. We're getting our epic girl boss moment for this movie, because girls are amazing. Anyway, continuing on, she manages to save Stitch and bring him back to the surface. And they use jumper cables to try to bring him back to life. Now, that's been a while since I've seen that in a movie. The last time I saw that in a movie was Frankenweenie 2012, you know, the anime version, that one. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that film. I have to go back to that one. But anyway, going back to this remake, Stitch comes back to life, of course. And of course, the Galactic Council comes back, collects Jumba, and also makes the whole scene where she's like to take 626. 626 reveals that he is basically become this independent thinker and a model citizen, and she decides to let Lilo have Stitch, and the family is intact, except Jumba is not there, and Pleakley technically doesn't count as family, more of a guardian for the planet. And of course the aliens leave, and then Lilo out of nowhere is like, you need to go to college, and Nani's like, need to take care of you, and yada yada yada. And then of course Bubbles tells her that Lilo can go up for adoption and stay with the neighbor lady that we care so much about, and that Nani can go to her college, but then Nani can use the portal gun to visit Lilo. And then the movie ends off with Nani going to California to go study for college in the marine biology class that she always wanted, and that's the end of this remake. Yay! Oh my gosh, this movie's bad. Like, I legit hated this movie. I've never had a movie where an ending managed to ruin everything for a movie. Usually, even if an ending isn't great, I'm like, okay, the ending is like the weakest part, but no, this ending is absolutely terrible. It destroys everything Lilo and Stitch stood for. What was that? Was that movie? It had so much potential. I was actually enjoying it until the final act ruined it all with the stupid college plot. I was even okay with the college subplot in the beginning, but then this movie is just like, Nani goes and she leaves Lilo with a foster family, which turns out to be her neighbor, and she can just portal her way out. And unfortunately, I will say, some people bought it. Some people bought this being an actually good ending, and it is not. I remember even arguing with people on Instagram about this movie, because people on Instagram are stupid and were gushing over this movie. And they were big mad when anyone criticized them, including me, who threw himself into the comments of one of the videos and basically explained the whole plot was terrible and the ending makes no sense. this. Because, yeah, even with the portal gun, how is Nani gonna get there? Because how the portal gun is established in this movie is kind of like the portal guns in the Portal games, which I explained exactly in the comments of that post. Which, never played Portal, but I am aware how the guns work. And the guns appear to work the same way as those. It's a portal gun, not take me wherever I want with the power of looking into my brain gun. And again, people got offended that I criticized the movie for being what it truly was and claimed that I didn't watch the movie. Oh my gosh, Instagram people are so stupid. I will give this remake some credit though, even though it doesn't deserve any credit. It is better than Snow White 2025. No doubt about it. That movie was absolutely terrible. Now, I know that's not saying much because it's still a bad remake, but it's not Snow White bad, where all the actors and actresses are insufferable, but it's still a pretty bad movie. And I will say, I do hate the Lilo and Stitch remake more than I do the Kim Possible remake. That's saying a lot because I absolutely hate that with a burning passion. But at the end of the day, at least we're not getting a "what do you mean this film did well in the box office?" So yeah, we're gonna get another one probably. Plans was if the movie did well, we're gonna get another one. Well, count me out. I am not seeing the sequel to this movie. This movie can burn. All I care. Wait. It also says that they have confidence to possibly keep going with live action remakes. Gosh, darn it! And the next one coming up is the Moana remake. We absolutely need this one to fail. Please let this one fail. We were so close to having no more live action remakes, and Stitch ruined it all. Our last shot is the Moana remake. We need to boycott it and make sure we don't watch it and give Disney our money. Let the Moana remake fall. But anyway, I would have to rate this movie, make it a 3. This movie is bad. But anyway, this is D to the B, signing off.